Good morning, guys. Welcome to the Liverpool FC Journal. I'm Owen James. This is your Liverpool news update for the 15th of January. Guys, look, we're going to talk Mo Salah, who will be heading back to Merseyside now after Egypt lost in the semi-finals of the AFCON to Senegal. Sadio Mane scoring the goal for Senegal. Well, you know what? At least one ex-Liverpool player has done well. We'll talk a little bit about the fallout from that and why there are still worries and concerns about Salah coming back and what it means for the squad. And there is still, I think, an issue there, and it will, I think, continue to rumble and could derail the season to some extent. We'll talk a bit about that. We're also going to talk about former Liverpool player Stan Collymore suggesting a pretty crazy swap deal, which I think has absolutely zero legs. But it's the comments that Collymore makes within what he says that are more interesting for me. And I think the comments that he makes more resonate with where this situation is for, and we're going to talk about Ibrahim Konate here, that Konate has got a very false sense of where he is as a player. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. But let's start off with Mo Salah. Egypt, yesterday obviously playing in the AFCON against Senegal. I think obviously Egypt had high hopes of getting to the final of AFCON. They had high hopes of doing well, but unfortunately for them, they did lose 1-0 to Senegal. Sadio Mane scoring in the 78th minute. Senegal pretty much dominating that game, 65% of possession to 35%, 11 shots to 4, 4 shots on target to 1 shot on target for Egypt. I mean, Senegal Senegal have got a good side. You know, they've got Gay, they've got Ndiaye, they've got Jackson, Diarra, Kabai, they've got Diouf, they've got Mendy, they've got Mane, obviously. Yes, Egypt have some decent players with Mamouche and Salah, but, you know, other than that, they are quite weak in other areas. There's not a lot of players that play in and around Europe in that Egypt side. You look at the two respective benches, and Senegal have got the likes of Sarr and Kamara to bring on. There's not a lot of wasn't a lot of talent on that Egypt bench. So look, you've got to kind of take that into account. Obviously, the second semi-final is today, Morocco versus Nigeria. I think the two favourites for the tournament. Now, obviously, Egypt are, they're a decent side, don't get me wrong. They progressed, they're in the World Cup. They obviously got through to from their group as well. But yesterday was an exceptionally disappointing day for Mohamed Salah. An exceptionally poor performance from the Liverpool player as well in a big game when the pressure was on. Salah really did kind of fail to deliver. And I know we've got to kind of, and I'm not, right, guys, let's get on things. I'm not sitting here slagging Salah this morning. I'm just bringing you what happened. And yes, you've got to take into account the fact that he plays in a team in Egypt that are not of the same talent level as Liverpool or the same talent level as Senegal or Nigeria or Morocco. Whilst Morocco have the likes of Hakimi and Diaz and Nigeria have the likes, of Osimhen and Bassi, and Senegal have got Ndiaye and Jackson and Mane, Egypt don't have that, so you've got to kind of take that into account. But they're still a decent side to get to a semi-finals of a major tournament, and Salah really did struggle massively to get into that game yesterday. He looked off the pace. He looked lacking again, as he's done all season, in those more intense games against those better oppositions. Yes, Salah has scored goals in this AFCON, but against the weaker opposition. His stats from yesterday's game, you can see on the screen there: 0 goals, 0 assists, 0 shots, 0 successful dribbles, and only 4, I think of his 18, passes completed in the game. It was an exceptionally poor display from Mohamed Salah for Egypt yesterday, and to me, it kind of opens a little bit of a can of worms, a little bit of a worry, going forward, because Salah is going to come back and he's going to want to start and he's going to want to play. And yes, Liverpool have not been great over this 10-match unbeaten run, and yeah, he has contributed to it. But does he walk straight back into this team? Well, I think he might do, on the grounds that just because there are so many bloody injuries. But does he add to this team? Does he improve this team? At the moment, and as much as this may seem sacrilegious and wrong to say, I don't think he does substantially improve this team. I don't think his form has massively improved. And I think we're going to be facing a situation where there will be the same issues and the same dissatisfaction between him and the head coach going forward. And that could really be an unsettling fact for Liverpool throughout the rest of this season. We've still obviously got the FA Cup to go for. We've still got the Champions League to go for. And as much as I say, that's probably unlikely. The FA Cup probably is the probably easiest of those two to win. Salah needs to step up his level. He really does need to step up his level, and he's kind of failed to do that so far. So, to me, it is a slight concern that he's kind of finished the tournament in a big game and really not delivered, and really shown the same style, form that he's shown for Liverpool. It's a concern. It is a worry. And I know that's going to upset those who are the big pro Salah guys, the Salah FC crowd out there. And I think there is within our fan base a huge Salah FC crowd who fail to see any wrong in him whatsoever, no matter how badly he plays. And look, I agree, Cody Gakpo has been a hell of a lot worse, but we're not here to talk about Cody Gakpo. We're talking about a player in Mo Salah who's on over 400 grand a week, who is the talisman of this team, who has not delivered on a regular basis. And it is a worry, him coming back in this form for me. So look, let's deal with it when it obviously comes up. He could be back in the squad for the Burnley game this weekend. Now, Stan Collymore, former Liverpool player, has been talking about Ibou Konate. Now, it was obviously rumoured the other day that by David Ornstein that Ibou Konate would be exiting the club at the end of this season. However, as it appears at the moment, I think this is definitely the case. I think, this is what it looks like. There seems to be a massive gap between what Konate wants and what Liverpool are prepared to offer. I think Konate has a very false sense of how good he is. I think Konate thinks he's as good as Virgil, of prime Virgil van Dijk. He's nowhere near in the same class as Virgil van Dijk. If you look at the best centre-halves in the Premier League at this moment in time, you talk about the likes of obviously Gabriel and Saliba for Arsenal. You certainly would not put him in the same class as those two. I mean, Fofana of Chelsea, I wouldn't even say he's in the same class as him at this moment in time. If you look at other teams, Manchester City, when they're fit, Diaz and Guardiola, again, I wouldn't put him in the same class as Diaz and Guardiola. In terms of Aston Villa, I wouldn't put him in the same class as Konsa or others. So I think he has a very false sense of how good he thinks he is. And I think if we had Mark Gay at the club, he wouldn't be starting. If we still had Jarell Quansah at the club, I think he probably wouldn't still be starting either. Now, Stan Collymore has. This, I think, is ridiculous. It is an absolute non-starter for me and will not happen. But he said that he thinks that Liverpool should offer Aston Villa, who have PSR difficulties, a swap deal, Konate for Ezri Konsa, which, look, ain't going to happen because, Konsa's got 2 years left, I think it is, on his deal. Whereas, obviously, Konate is out. Konsa is older, 28 years old. Yes, Konsa is an England international. Don't get me wrong. He is an England international. He probably will start for England over Mark Gahey in this summer's tournament alongside John Stones. That's what Thomas Tuchel seems to prefer. So, look, I'm not saying that he's not a good player. He is a very good player. However, I think this is a pie in the sky, never going to happen kind of talk from Collymore. But what made me talk about this story this morning was this comment that Stan Collymore made after he kind of talked about the whole swap deal. He said, "For me, Conte thinks he's the best defender since sliced bread, but hasn't played like it recently. I'm sure he's thinking he's going to the likes of PSG or Real Madrid, but there could be a swap deal where Konsa goes to Liverpool and Konate goes to Villa. That would be something that would work for both parties." Now, I disregard the end of that comment. I really don't see that happening. There's been no indication that Liverpool are in the slightest bit interested in Ezri Konsa. As good as Ezri Konsa is, I think he's a very good defender, don't get me wrong. But I can't see Liverpool going for him. I'd like him at the club. I think, if we brought Ezri Konsa in January, I think it would be a great move. But I don't think it happens. But the first comment that he makes, I think, is very, very accurate. Konate thinks he's the best defender since sliced bread. He thinks he's going here, there and everywhere. He's right. Konate, I think, does have a very high opinion of himself. Konate does think he is the greatest thing ever, I think. And I think that very high opinion of himself and that false sense of himself is giving him these delusions of grandeur when it comes to contracts, when it comes to the amount of money he thinks he's worth, when it comes to the amount of money he thinks he deserves. And the fact that he thinks as well that, oh, well, Liverpool won't give me 300 grand, 275, 350 a week. But if I hang on to the end of the season, I'm going to go somewhere for free, like Paris Saint-Germain, like Bayern Munich, like Real Madrid, and they're going to pay me that. Well, I honestly think Konate could find himself without a club for quite a while at the end of this season, because his form this season has been so bad that I think a lot of these teams are going to look at him and go, you know what? I ain't risking it. I'm not paying him a big signing on fee and paying him 300 grand a week when he's been this bad this season. And he has been very, very bad this season. You know, and I think whoever's advising him has done an absolutely dreadful job of advising him. I think that they really have. And like I've said in previous videos, the Real Madrid scout was spot on with what he said. He is quick and physical, good, but he is, has serious concentration issues and makes big mistakes through panicking and not doing his job right. So I think, personally speaking, like I said, I think the whole Konsa swap deal is ridiculous. Don't get me wrong, but I do think that first part of that comment that Collymore makes is right. I think Konate does have an incredibly false sense of where he is at this moment in time. Guys, I'd love to know your thoughts on the stories we've covered in this morning's video. Thank you for watching the Liverpool FC Journal. If you enjoyed the content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Help us to keep growing. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.